Section 1 of The Mahatma and the Hare, A Dream Story. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Mahatma and the Hare, A Dream Story by H. Rider Haggard. Ultimately, a good hare was found which took the field at blank. There the hounds pressed her, and on the hunt arriving at the edge of the cliff, the hare could be seen crossing the beach and going right out to sea. A boat was procured, and the master and some others rowed out to her just as she drowned, and bringing the body in, gave it to the hounds. A hare swimming out to sea is a sight not often witnessed. Local paper, January 1911. A long check occurred in the latter part of this hunt, the hare having laid up in a hedgerow, from which she was at last evicted by a crack of the whip. Her next place of refuge was a horse pond, which she tried to swim, but got stuck in the ice midway and was sinking, when the huntsman went in after her. It was a novel sight to see huntsman and hare being lifted over a wall out of the pond, the eager pack waiting for their prey behind the wall. Local paper, February 1911. The author supposes that the first of the above extracts must have impressed him. At any rate, on the night after the reading of it, just as he went to sleep, or on the following morning just as he awoke, he cannot tell which, there came to him the title and the outlines of this fantasy, including the command with which it ends. With a particular clearness did he seem to see the picture of the great white road, straight as the way of the spirit, and broad as the breast of death, and of the little hare traveling towards the awful gates. Like the Mahatma of this fable, he expresses no opinion as to the merits of the controversy between the red-faced man and the hare that, without search on his own part, presented itself to his mind in so odd a fashion. It is one on which anybody interested in such matters can form an individual judgment. The Mahatma. Footnote. Mahatma, great-souled, one of a class of persons with preternatural powers, imagined to exist in India and Tibet. New English Dictionary. End footnote. Everyone has seen a hare, either crouched or running in the fields, or hanging dead in a poulterer's shop, or lastly pathetic, even dreadful-looking, and in this form almost indistinguishable from a skinned cat, on the domestic table. But not many people have met a Mahatma, at least to their knowledge. Not many people know even who or what a Mahatma is. The majority of those who chance to have heard the title are apt to confuse it with another, that of Mad Hatter. This is even done of malice prepense, especially for obvious reasons if a hare is in any way concerned, in scorn, not in ignorance, by persons who are well acquainted with the real meaning of the word, and even with its Sanskrit origin. The truth is that an incredulous Western world puts no faith in Mahatmas. To it, a Mahatma is a kind of spiritual Mrs. Harris, giving an address in Tibet at which no letters are delivered. Either, it says, there is no such person, or he is a fraudulent scamp with no greater occult powers, than a hare. I confess that this view of Mahatmas is one that does not surprise me in the least. I never met, and I scarcely expect to meet, an individual entitled to set Mahatma after his name. Certainly I have no right to do so, who only took that title on the spur of the moment when the hare asked me how I was called, and now make use of it as a nom de plume. It is true that there is Jorson, by whose order, for it amounts to that, I publish this history. For aught I know, Jorson may be a Mahatma, but he does not in the least look the part. Imagine a bluff person with a strong, hard face, piercing gray eyes, and very prominent, bushy eyebrows, of about 50 or 60 years of age. Add a Scotch accent and a meerschaum pipe, which he smokes even when he is wearing a frock coat and a tall hat, and you have Jorson. I believe that he lives somewhere in the country, is well off, and practices gardening. If so, he has never asked me to his place, and I only meet him when he comes to town, as I understand, to visit flower shows. Then I always meet him because he orders me to do so, not by letter or by word of mouth, but in quite a different way. Suddenly I receive an impression in my mind that I am to go to a certain place at a certain hour, and that there I shall find Jorson. I do go, sometimes to an hotel, sometimes to a lodging, sometimes to a railway station or to the corner of a particular street, and there I do find Jorson smoking his big meerschaum pipe. We shake hands, and he explains why he has sent for me, after which we talk of various things. Never mind what they are, for that would be telling Jorson's secrets as well as my own, which I must not do. It may be asked how I came to know Jorson. Well, in a strange way. Nearly 30 years ago, a dreadful thing happened to me. I was married, and although still young, a person of some mark in literature. Indeed, even now, one or two of the books which I wrote are read and remembered, although it is supposed that their author has long left the world. The thing which happened was that my wife and our daughter were coming over from the Channel Islands, where they had been on a visit. She was a Jersey woman. And well, the ship was lost. That's all. The shock broke my heart in such a way that it has never been mended again, but unfortunately did not kill me. Afterwards I took to drink and sank, as drunkards do. Then the river began to draw me. I had a lodging in a poor street at Chelsea, and I could hear the river calling me at night, and I wished to die as the others had died. At last I yielded, for the drink had rotted out all my moral sense. About 1 o'clock of a wild winter morning, I went to a bridge I knew where in those days policemen rarely came, and listened to that call of the water. Come, it seemed to say, this world is the real hell, ending in the eternal naught. The dreams of a life beyond and of reunion there are but a demon's mocking breathed into the mortal heart, lest by its universal suicide mankind should rob him of his torture pit. There is no truth in all your father taught you. He was a clergyman and rather eminent in his profession. There is no hope for man. There is nothing he can win except the deep happiness of sleep. Come and sleep. Such were the arguments of that voice of the river, the old familiar arguments of desolation and despair. I leant over the parapet. In another moment I should have been gone, when I became aware that someone was standing near to me. I did not see the person because it was too dark. I did not hear him because of the raving of the wind, but I knew that he was there. So I waited until the moon shone out for a while between the edges of two ragged clouds, the shapes of which I can see to this hour. It showed me Jorson, looking just as he does today, for he never seems to change. Jorson, on whom, to my knowledge, I had not set eyes before. Even a year ago, he said in his strong, rough voice, you would not have allowed your mind to be convinced by such arguments as those which you have just heard in the voice of the river. That is one of the worst sides of drink. It decays the reason as it does the body. You must have noticed it yourself. I replied that I had, for I was surprised into acquiescence. Then I grew defiant, and asked him what he knew of the arguments which were or were not influencing me. To my surprise, no, that is not the word, to my bewilderment, he repeated them to me, one by one, just as they had arisen a few minutes before in my heart. Moreover, he told me what I had been about to do, and why I was about to do it. You know me and my story, I muttered at last. No, he answered, at least not more than I know that of many men with whom I chance to be in touch. That is, I have not met you for nearly 1,100 years. 1,086, to be correct. I was a blind priest then, and you were the captain of Irene's guard. At this news I burst out laughing, and the laugh did me good. I did not know I was so old, I said. Do you call that old? Answered Jorson. Why, the first time we had anything to do with each other, so far as I can learn that is, was over 8,000 years ago, in Egypt, before the beginning of recorded history. I thought that I was mad, but you are madder, I said. Doubtless. Well, I am so mad that I managed to be here in time to save you from suicide, as once in the past you saved me, for thus things come round. But your rooms are near, are they not? Let us go there and talk. This place is cold, and the river is always calling. That was how I came to know Jorson, whom I believe to be one of the greatest men alive. On this particular night that I have described, he told me many things, and since then he has taught me much, me and a few others. But whether he is what is called a Mahatma, I am sure I do not know. He has never claimed such a rank in my hearing, or indeed to be anything more than a man who has succeeded in winning a knowledge of his own powers out of the depths of the dark that lies behind us. Of course, I mean out of his past in other incarnations, long before he was Jorson. Moreover, by degrees, as I grew fit to bear the light, he showed me something of my own, and of how the two were intertwined. But all these things are secrets of which I have perhaps no right to speak at present. It is enough to say that Jorson changed the current of my life on that night when he saved me from death. For instance, from that day onwards to the present time, I have never touched the drink which so nearly ruined me. Also, the darkness has rolled away, and with it every doubt and fear. I know the truth, and for that truth I live. Considered from certain aspects, such knowledge, I admit, is not altogether desirable. Thus it has deprived me of my interest in earthly things. Ambition has left me altogether. For years I have had no wish to succeed in the profession which I adopted in my youth, or in any other. Indeed, I doubt whether the elements of worldly success still remain in me, whether they are not entirely burned away by that fire of wisdom in which I have bathed. How can we strive to win a crown we have no longer any desire to wear? Now I desire other crowns, and at times I wear them, if only for a little while. My spirit grows and grows, it is dragging at its strings. What am I to look at? A small, white-haired man with a thin and rather plaintive face, in which are set two large, dark eyes that continually seem to soften and develop. That is my picture. And what am I in the world? I will tell you. On certain days of the week, I employ myself in editing a trade journal that has to do with haberdashery. On another day, I act as auctioneer to a firm which imports and sells cheap Italian statuary, modern, very modern copies of the antique florid marble vases, and so forth. Some of you who read may have passed such marts in different parts of the city, or even have dropped in and purchased a bust or tazza for a surprisingly small sum. Perhaps I knocked it down to you only too pleased to find a bona fide bidder amongst my company. As for the rest of my time, well, I employ it in doing what good I can among the poor and those who need comfort or who are bereaved, especially among those who are bereaved, for to such I am sometimes able to bring the breath of hope that blows from another shore. Occasionally, also, I amuse myself in my own fashion. Thus, sure knowledge has come to me about certain epochs in the past in which I lived in other shapes, and I study those epochs, hoping that one day I may find time to write of them and of the parts I played in them. Some of these parts are extremely interesting, especially as I am of course able to contrast them with our modern modes of thought and action. They do not all come back to me with equal clearness, the earlier lives being, as one might expect, the more difficult to recover, and the comparatively recent ones the easiest. Also, they seem to range over a vast stretch of time, back indeed to the days of primeval, prehistoric man. In short, I think the subconscious in some ways resembles the conscious and natural memory. That which is very far off to it grows dim and blurred. That which is comparatively close remains clear and sharp, although of course this rule is not invariable. Moreover, there is foresight as well as memory. At least from time to time I seem to come in touch with future events and states of society in which I shall have my share. I believe some thinkers hold a theory that such conditions as those of past, present, and future do not in fact exist. that everything already is, standing like a completed column between earth and heaven, that the sum is added up, the equation worked out. At times I am tempted to believe in the truth of this proposition. But if it be true, of course it remains difficult to obtain a clear view of other parts of the column than that in which we happen to find ourselves objectively conscious at any given period, and needless to say, impossible to see it from base to capital. However this may be, no individual entity pervades all the column. There are great sections of it with which that entity has nothing to do, although it always seems to appear again above. I suppose that those sections which are empty of an individual and his atmosphere represent the intervals between his lives, which he spends in sleep or in states of existence with which this world is not concerned. But of such gulfs of oblivion and states of being I know nothing. To take a single instance of what I do know, once this spirit of mine, that now by the workings of destiny for a little while occupies the body of a fourth-rate auctioneer and of the editor of a trade journal, dwelt in that of a Pharaoh of Egypt. Never mind which Pharaoh. Yes, although you may laugh and think me mad to say it, for me the legions fought and thundered. To me the peoples bowed and the secret sanctuaries were opened that I and I alone might commune with the gods. I who in the flesh and after it myself was worshipped as a god. Well, of this forgotten royalty, of whom little is known save what a few inscriptions have to tell, there remains a portrait statue in the British Museum. Sometimes I go to look at that statue, and try to recall exactly under what circumstances I caused it to be shaped, puzzling out the story bit by bit. Not long ago I stood thus absorbed, and did not notice that the hour of the closing of the great gallery had come. Still I stood and gazed and dreamt till the policeman on duty, seeing and suspecting me, came up and roughly ordered me to be gone. The man's tone angered me. I laid my hand on the foot of the statue, for it had just come back to me that it was a Ka image, a sacred thing, any Egyptologist will know what I mean, which for ages had sat in a chamber of my tomb. Then the Ka that clings to it eternally awoke at my touch and knew me, or so I suppose. At least I felt myself change. A new strength came into me. My shape, battered in this world's storms, put on something of its ancient dignity. My eyes grew royal. I looked at that man as Pharaoh may have looked at one who had done him an insult. He saw the change and trembled. Yes, trembled. I believe he thought I was some imperial ghost that the shadows of evening had caused him to mistake for man. At any rate, he gasped out, "I beg your pardon. I was obeying orders. I hope your majesty won't hurt me. Now I think of it, I have been told that things come out of these old statues in the night." Then turning, he ran, literally ran, where to I am sure I do not know, probably to seek the fellowship of some other policeman. In due course I followed, and lifting the bar at the end of the hall, departed without further question asked. Afterwards I was very glad to think that I had done the man no injury. At the moment I knew that I could hurt him if I would, and what is more, I had the desire to do so. It came to me, I suppose, with that breath of the past when I was so great and absolute. Perhaps I, or that part of me then incarnate, was a tyrant in those days, and this is why now I must be so humble. Fate is turning my pride to its hammer and beating it out of me. For thus, in the long history of the soul, it serves all our vices. End of section 1. Read by John R. Moore, Albertville, Alabama, December 2022.